Hello, my name is Mary Beth Carlin, and this is my vlog for CNT 301. So, my question that I'm choosing to do is the COVID pandemic has transformed the outlook of education, but has it all been positive? And how will we reflect upon this occasion in 20 plus years' time? So, to begin, I'm going to talk about kind of what COVID was like for me personally and kind of the world. COVID started the spring of 2020 in March, and I was in school at K-State, and we had spring break, and then they said, oh, you get 2 more weeks of spring break, and we're all excited for it. We're like, oh yeah, like extra little break, and we ended up never going back to school until the fall. This changed a lot of people's mental health, I think, from what I've seen. Not going into work, not going to school, not having a consistent schedule is a really big one that I've seen personally. Having kids at home 24/7, parents used to send their kids off to school, have the whole day to kind of do their work and get stuff done, and then suddenly kids are at home 24/7 and you have to entertain them, you have to do their schooling. So it was a lot. And I babysat for a family during this time in my neighborhood and kind of got to experience their online schooling, what it was like. The youngest girl was in first grade, and I vividly remember a lot of her kind of assignments that her teacher assigned was go out on a walk and go into nature, find certain stuff. So it was a lot of kind of interactive stuff to get the kids outside of the house and keep them busy. So I think that her teacher was really nice to the parents in doing that instead of just assigning 20 pages of homework to do in the house. And I know it affected me a lot during the 2020 to 2021 school year because 100% of my classes were online the whole year. So I went from August to May, all online school. And some things that it affected for me was my attention span and my willingness or desire to work. It was at an all-time low. I would sit in my room for 8+ hours doing online school and homework, and it was all on Zoom, and I would just have no desire to go work out or go outside, go hang out with friends. Like, it was very depressing because you spent your whole life pretty much inside for at least a year. And I think how it's affected the education and schooling is kids that are in kindergarten and first grade, like right now, don't know what the normal world was like before, what it's like not to wear masks in school, and they have a very different outlook on life and what they think school is. Something that I think back on a lot is 9/11, and when how I think we look back on COVID is kind of similar to how we look back on 9/11 now. Obviously, I was 1 year old when 9/11 happened, so I didn't experience what life was like before it, but I can assume from all the TV shows I watch and stuff, if you wanted to meet your friend at the gate, you would just walk up to the gate and meet them. And then once 9/11 happened, all the airports and so much more security in the world kind of took place because a lot of people were in fear and stuff, obviously. And I don't think we will never not have COVID. I think it will always be here, kind of like the flu. Like, I don't think it'll just disappear. But I think we will keep studying it and getting vaccines for it and kind of get used to living with it like we do with the flu. I think it's always going to be something serious, kind of. But we will learn how to live with it. But, yeah, before 9/11, airports didn't have any security. Anyone could go up to the gates. And then after 9/11, everyone thought airports were super high security and very, like, extreme. But now it's extremely normal to go to an airport and go through security because we're used to it now and I think that's what it'll be like for COVID. I think right now it's something that we're thinking about every day and think it's never going to be the same. But I think 10, 20 years from now, we'll think back and say, yeah, it was obviously something super horrible and took so many lives, but I think we will learn how to live with it. And I think the effects of COVID are more extreme for, I guess, society and like kids and stuff than 9/11. Because today, I think that kids have, their social skills have decreased so much because we spent 2 years in isolation with very little to no like world experiences. And I think like for me personally, if we went to the grocery store, it would just be one person. During like the COVID isolation, one person would go to the grocery store and then come back. It wasn't like a little family trip kind of. It was solely to get food and come back. And even with kids now, if they were 1 year to 4 years old when COVID happened, now they don't have kind of the ability that we have to speak to people and interact with kids and stuff. Like I have some family friends and they had kids during COVID, and it's kind of called like the COVID kid because they had a whole different experience than other kids that grew up not during COVID. I feel like they were very independent because they didn't get to go have play dates with other people. They spent all their time either alone or just like with family and stuff. So I think that's become, or will have an effect on them. And I also think something that's pretty serious is kids were kind of like held back in a sense during COVID because online schooling was obviously not the most beneficial way to teaching and learning, but it was the only option at the time and the best option at the time. But teachers last year and this year are having to go back and reteach so many concepts because kids didn't learn it correctly or at all during COVID. And I know many kids, especially reading, has become something that teachers are having to go back, and there's some 3rd, 4th graders that don't know how to read or aren't very good at reading because during COVID, maybe their parents didn't have the opportunity to read to them as much, or whatever reason why their reading is not very good. And that's something that's very serious. Like, literacy is a way of life now. Like, you need to be able to read. And so it'll be interesting to see in 10, 20 years plus time where those kids are right now, because they are known as the COVID kids. So I think it's something that no one knows what it'll look like in 20 years, but I think that everyone has learned something during COVID, and we can look back and realize we kind of all got through it together.